Okay. Okay. As long as I don't move. So, good afternoon. 你好吗？我很高兴来台北。我叫 Chris Schalk. Is that okay? 我叫 Chris Schalk. That's okay, right? Chris Schalk? Oh, okay. 我很高兴来台北. That's okay. 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 Obviously, I don't speak Chinese, but I tried to learn a little bit to get started. So I'm sorry I don't speak more Chinese, but I'll try to speak slowly. And if you understand English, thank you very much. Obviously, we don't have interpreters for this presentation, but for the next presentation, we will have an interpreter, which I'm doing immediately after this one. And that's a little bit more advanced topic, so feel free to stay with us for the second hour. But for the first hour, I'm going to give a general overview of OpenSocial. And so hopefully I can cover enough topics within the amount of time that we have here. Okay. So here's the agenda that I'm going to cover today. Essentially describing the main concept behind OpenSocial, and then I'll start discussing how you go about building actual OpenSocial applications. How many people here are familiar with Google Gadgets technology? So familiar with it? Okay. And how many people have actually developed a Google Gadget here? Just tried it out. Okay, so some people have some familiarity. That's good. And it looks like some people don't have familiarity with Google Gadgets as well, right? So if you've never worked with gadgets, that's okay, because I explain how it works in this section here. The other thing I'll be talking about is the whole notion of hosting OpenSocial applications. So it's one thing to build an application which gets hosted on a website such as iGoogle or Orchid or whatever, but for you as your own company to host an OpenSocial application, that's something different. And I'll explain the approaches that you can go through in doing that as well. So that leads me to the next part where I describe Google Friend Connect, which is a very simple way to host OpenSocial applications. And then I also speak about the more enterprise partners that are out there hosting OpenSocial applications today. So we have a number of what are called containers. So container for us is the term that we use for people who can contain an OpenSocial application, or they provide, I guess provider would be a good name as well to call them. Okay, so hopefully this works. Okay, good. So that's good. Jump into the first one. So isn't that a pretty picture? I drew that myself. No, I didn't draw it. This is actually drawn by the daughter of my colleague at Google. And it's nice because she's, I think, 9 years old, but she really understands the true intent of OpenSocial in the sense that OpenSocial's goal is to make the web more social, and to make it more social in an easier, standards-based way. So you can utilize open source methodology as opposed to going down a very proprietary way. So this is a nice picture. She showed essentially people who are interacting with each other, and OpenSocial's main goal is to provide and make OpenSocial, or make the web a more social environment. Okay, so at a very high level, what are the details that OpenSocial encompasses? Well, in short, OpenSocial is a set of APIs that operate in standard web technologies. And I go into more detail later, but essentially, if you understand HTML, if you understand JavaScript and CSS, as well as some other security things like OAuth, these are all technologies that OpenSocial encompasses to provide essentially the technology to build and host OpenSocial applications. Now, I'll also be touching on a technology known as Shindig. Shindig is an Apache open source project that it serves essentially as a reference implementation of OpenSocial. So that means it's open source. You can download the code, you can run it, and you can use it for free. So it's a very nice bit of technology. And so if you wanted to build your own social networking site, you could just download that software and use it immediately to build your own social networking site. OpenSocial also, it's more than just the software. It's actually a community of developers and community of users. the developers span hundreds, if not thousands of developers around the world. So, for example, last November, I went to India and we met with a bunch of Indian software developers, and they learned OpenSocial, and they now have a number of very successful OpenSocial applications that are getting very popular, and they're actually being quite successful with OpenSocial. Likewise, in Japan, we did some meetings, and we got a lot of people now starting to build OpenSocial applications in Japan. Likewise in China, and of course here in Taiwan. It would be great to reach out and continue to help growing the overall development community for OpenSocial. What are the key advantages? Well, as I said, there's a lot of features built into it. It's very relatively easy to work with, like you can download reference code, or you can just look at the specification online and be able to start either hosting or just building applications by themselves. And the cool thing, if you're an application developer that wants to build social applications, you can literally reach over 275 million users around the world just by virtue of all of these other websites now that are supporting the OpenSocial standard. So that's very powerful. So some of the people that we introduced to OpenSocial just a few months ago that are now having their applications viewed and interacted with by millions of people around the world just because they went down this path to utilize OpenSocial. And of course, the web users themselves can take advantage of the, oh sorry, my backpack fell over. Never mind. Because my backpack fell over and the stuff fell out. Anyway, what can you do? Where was it? So the web users, the people who are using these applications, can really take advantage of the fact that they have all of these applications now to choose from, because it's a very happy and very productive ecosystem. So developer ecosystem, that's the term we tend to use. It's like a thriving environment. And of course, what's the biggest advantage of OpenSocial? I think I mentioned it, but you may have seen some of these slides. Before OpenSocial, the developer, so that's Joe Developer there, he would have to write different types of applications that work in distinctly different environments. But now with OpenSocial, because it's standards-based, he can write once and have it deployed everywhere. So that's a very powerful concept there. And so he's actually much happier because now he can go back and take a single application and deploy it on all those different websites and reach over 275 million users out there. So he can see he's quite happy there. And so anyway, I should probably put $signs in his eyes. Anyway, here's just a small sample of our partners around the world that either have existing running live platform development environments or have committed a partnership with Google to start building the OpenSocial technology within their technology stack. So in that case, we have, you probably recognize a good number of these names here. And each one have their own particular audience that they tend to cater towards. Like for example, Oracle. Oracle has a more of a business enterprise software audience, but they're looking into OpenSocial to provide interconnectivity between sales engineers to also internally for sales communication, customer relationship management. That's something that they're looking into. Right? Now, let's talk about the technology itself. I'm going to step through some how to build OpenSocial applications. Now, as I mentioned before, building OpenSocial applications literally just means that you follow traditional or standards-based web or AJAX application development processes. So in this sense, if you're good with HTML, JavaScript, CSS, you'll be fine with building OpenSocial client applications. Likewise, you can utilize, if you've ever heard of LAMP, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, these are all technologies that work very well with OpenSocial applications. And I'll explain exactly how they can work together. You don't necessarily need them, but you can actually augment the technology you have. And also, you may have heard of a term called cloud or cloud computing. This fits also very well with OpenSocial in the sense that you can have your application reach out and communicate with a cloud of servers that provide data and so forth. OpenSocial is also very cool in the sense that it provides, within the specification itself, what are called viral features, features that allow you to share your application. So you can share it in a number of ways, like sharing it just by literally having the application itself prompt the user, would you like to share this application, or posting an activity to an activity stream. I'll explain a little bit more about activities, but essentially the bottom line is that the OpenSocial provides a number of features inside of the specification itself that lend themselves very well to being social applications. And then once you understand all the technology, you can go and actually start working with OpenSocial applications today in a number of developer sandboxes. Sandbox is a term that we use to describe essentially a development environment where you can register and you can log into the environment and then start working with the code and testing it and prototyping and so forth. And these are all free. You can try it out and become productive very quickly. All right. So let me drill down a little bit more on OpenSocial client APIs. Want me to speak a little bit closer to that, or you can hear me okay? How's that? Is that better? Ah, there you go. Now you can hear me. As I'm talking away, you just kind of... So anyway, I can hear myself too. It's a little bit scary. So, let's see, where was I? Okay, so client APIs. As you get familiar with OpenSocial, you can start building applications utilizing two types of client APIs. One is the JavaScript API. So if you want to purely build applications that use JavaScript, you can. And so in this sense, you're using JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and AJAX methodologies, if you want to. Now, the other side of it is that if you want to communicate with OpenSocial servers, you can use what's called a new RESTful API. How many people have heard of RESTful APIs or RESTful protocols, or REST in general? How many people would like to REST right now? And they say you can't do humor in other countries, but I'm proving them wrong, right, Tommy? So it's waking up there, okay. Didn't mean to disturb you. So anyway, so RESTful APIs is a way that you can do simple transactions to other hosts, other web hosts, just like a browser. When you go type a web address and it makes a request to a server, that is essentially a REST API. It's doing an HTTP GET to a server. That's a very cool thing about OpenSocial. It's now in the process of providing very simplified REST APIs that you can interact with the server. So that's all I wanted to say, is that you can use JavaScript and use, so JavaScript inside a web page, and it will do the processing for you to communicate with an OpenSocial server. Or you can just go very basic and use the REST APIs. And you can write Java or Perl or PHP to initiate a REST request to the server to interact with an OpenSocial data server. Okay, so if I go down the JavaScript path, how would I build these applications? Well, as I mentioned before, if you know how to develop gadgets or iGoogle gadgets, you already know how to build OpenSocial applications. It's just that OpenSocial applications provide additional functionality, meaning that instead of just traditional gadgets where you can write some JavaScript and have it embedded in a little iframe or a little window in a web page, here you can actually access social information. So people's friends, what they're doing with activities and so forth. You can access that from a program's point of view, programmatic. What was the word I'm thinking of? So programmatically, you can access that information. Okay, so I like to call it OpenSocial applications are like gadgets plus plus. So it's a little bit more than what you would know with normal gadgets. Okay. So if we take a look at in general how it works, you start off with a server, and this server could be iGoogle, Orkut, MySpace, High5, any number of OpenSocial servers, and then of course you need the actual source code of your application. And so in this case, you would write JavaScript, HTML inside, right over there. I don't think I have a laser on here. What am I going to do? I got to put it on stun. Oh, that's okay. So anyway, I can do a finger puppet. Anyway, so you can put your JavaScript inside of an XML document, and then you host the XML document on the web anywhere. And then your server, you register, this is part of the registration within the server. You tell the server, hey, this is the location of my application. I want you to consume it, and then it will be cached on the server. and then it will allow it to render into a web page. And the communication protocol is JSON, JavaScript Object Notation. And so at that point, you're within an environment. You're within a social networking site. You're accessing the rendered application, and the application is communicating back and forth to the server to respond to the requests. So that's basically how it works. Now, if we drill down a little bit more on the actual API itself for OpenSocial, it's broken down into 3 core areas. One is the people and friends. So this is a portion of the API that allows you to access your friends' information programmatically. Yes, it is. It also, there's the activities. This is like another area of the API that allows you to see what your friends are doing, or you can share what you're doing. And this is what's known as hosting to an activity stream. And I'll show you how that works as well. And then finally, persistence. This is the ability to, I think my microphone moved. There we go. How's that? This is the ability to save data on the OpenSocial server. And there's 2 ways to do this. One is you can just save it locally, directly on the server, or you can reach out and go to a third-party server to store data. So it's quite flexible in what you want to do. But the persistence API allows you just to do some real quick, simple local saving onto the OpenSocial server. Okay? And of course, if you're familiar with gadgets, you have all of the gadgets programming infrastructure there as well. So that means you have, it's like the microphone changes a little bit. You have what's called Gadgets Core for just handling gadget preferences or dealing with I/O. And then you have more specific features like window management or working with Flash and so forth. So if you're familiar with gadgets, you have all of that available to you. Let's take a look at some code. Here's an example of a JavaScript function that's utilizing the Friends API, and this will go through and actually make a request to request both who the viewer is, like who is viewing the application, and then also who are the viewer's friends. And this is a typical asynchronous programming approach where you create a request, you send a request to the server, and then you register a callback function, where the callback function is registered right here. And so asynchronously, the callback function will be invoked once the response comes back. So in that case, you can have the program where the browser is not hung up waiting for this particular response to come back. And here's the response. Here's the callback function. And in this case, I'm retrieving the data that was returned from the server, and then I use standard dynamic HTML programming to display the data in the screen. So this in itself is like a typical hello world example of a OpenSocial application. Everyone familiar with the concept of the hello world program? Yeah. Okay, good. Is that funny? Now, as I mentioned before, posting an activity. This is a common way by which you can share what you're doing or your friends can share with you. And programmatically speaking, it's the same process. You build a request, you create this like new activity, you can specify some parameters, what priority, you can specify specific text associated with the activity, and then also register a callback just to let you know that the activity was successfully posted. And so in this case, this little function is being called like, this is a sample activity created at this current date. And it's up to the container or the server itself to manage that activity and then post it up as like for example, Orchid, Google Orchid, if you're familiar with that, that has this notion of updates. So you would look my updates or what your friends updates, and you can see this continuous activity stream of what people are doing. And so this is how you can do this programmatically within your application. And of course, remember persisting data. So here's an example of just creating 2 random numbers and then associating that with those keys, like at field 1 or at field 2, and then I create this request and I send it off to the server. And all I'm doing is storing these random numbers onto the server, and then I have a callback function called request my data. So once the data is successfully stored, I want to retrieve it. So, and this is just an example, of course, you can do whatever manner you want, but in this case, request my data is now, it wants to fetch both at field 1 and at field 2 and have the data come back, and then you essentially get the idea that you're interacting with the server, you're specifying a name-value pair, the data, and then you can do whatever you want with that data. So you can display it on the screen, or it could be some other type of parameter or something like that. Okay, so let me step into some demonstrations. So I'm going to bring up, in this case, I'm going to bring up a couple of things on the, well, that's actually Orchid right there. If you're familiar with Orchid, it's a social networking site, very popular in India and Brazil. And Taiwan, right? No. But anyway, I'll have to sit down for this one. So. Okay. So I'll just go to, I have to bounce around a little bit because we're a little bit short on time. So here's the sandbox environment for Orchid. And I'm in the applications edit environment. Oh, sorry. Never mind. I'll pass through this as well. When you get a chance, can someone, so I can plug into the internet as opposed to doing Wi-Fi? Hey, Conway, can you go and ask the person to bring me a wired connection? Anyway, as you can see, HiNet is a very interesting site. So anyway, I'll go back here to my, okay, there we go. And as you can see there's a slightly younger version of me, so I couldn't find any good pictures, so I used that one just a few years ago. But, doesn't look like me. And and in order, say I built my application, and I actually have some applications that you can try out as well. I have them hosted on this web address here. Let me just go up one level. There we go. So this is my own website, and I have some different examples of some very basic applications that you can try out. So in this case, list friends, which is literally the same code. Here's my friend coming right now. This thing is, it's like a magic show. What's in the box? Okay. All right, now we're wired. I'll probably mess up my Wi-Fi connection. All right, here we go. And so, as you can see, it's exactly the same code. See, because you all remembered exactly what I showed, right? So it's exactly, just take my word for it. It's the same code that I showed you in the slide, where I'm creating a request to go to the server, and the server data is coming back, and then I'm displaying the data in the screen. And so now you're probably curious what this application looks like. And so, to add this application in this environment, what I would just do is just add the URL and click Add Application right there. And then I click on Add It, and it will allow me to essentially run the application here. So now that, well, that's if everything is working. I probably need to refresh everything. That's fine. I changed my network connection. Okay. So there's my list friends example, and I'm going to click on the link. And we'll go back and display my friends within this environment. So in this case, this is like going back, retrieving my friends' information, and a little bit of dynamic HTML displaying the friends' information on the page there. So pretty basic stuff, but just so you can get a feel for what it looks like. Okay, so I have another demo, activities. And this is the same code I showed you. It's a little bit of HTML where I say, hello Taipei, for example, like that. And no disrespect. And since it's running in the environment, I can click on updates, and I can see my updates, and I can see hello Taipei. So this shows me I'm interacting with the server, posting activity to an activity stream. And of course, High Five, Orchid, or MySpace, they all have their notions of activities. Okay? So pretty easy so far, right? Okay. All right. So, let me stand now. You can see me again. So far I've talked about friends, people, activities, persistence on the server, that is. But what about if you wanted to persist some data on another server? Well, you actually can. You can utilize a third party or an external server simply by making the call get.io.makeRequest. And this allows you to store data that can be much larger and more specific to your own environment. As an example, I know some companies in India that they have a lot of games, and they like to allow people to share or compare their scores. And so this is a lot of data from thousands of users. They would overrun their environments on the OpenSocial servers, but they just tie into their back-end servers to store this data. And so in that sense, they tie into an external server, and they use their own servers, or in this case, you could use something like App Engine to be the data provider or the data repository for your application. So in this case, you could build your application that makes gadgets.io that make requests back and forth to the server. The OpenSocial server routes that request over to the third-party or external server. And then at that point, you have full kind of connectivity with both your own home server as well as the OpenSocial server. Okay. And of course, if you're wondering about security, there's a technology or standard technology known as OAuth. So you can make authenticated secure transactions back and forth between different sites. Okay. These are some very important URLs. Hopefully you'll get the slides as well. But a very good one I recommend, well, of course, the top one, just the main website for the documentation, but then also going to this webpage, /p/OpenSocial-resources. There's a bunch of examples there on doing every aspect of OpenSocial development that I would definitely recommend that you guys check out. And then, likewise, if you want to get started, you can work with the sandbox environments on Orchid, High5, MySpace, and various other ones. And we actually have a comprehensive list on our website as well. All right. So let me shift over and talk about hosting OpenSocial applications, if I have enough time. So what I'm going to talk about is Shindig. Shindig is software that you can actually download and get up and running and have your own site. So you can have your own Orchid or your own High5, whatever. And what is it? Well, it's basically a gadget server. So it's a server that allows you to render the HTML, XML within a iframe, the essentially portion of your web page. And it also has this RESTful API integrated inside of it. Well, it's in progress. It's currently being developed, but you can already start to play with it today. So at a glance, the technology, there's your server, there's your gadget running inside of it, and back in that Shindig, or the OpenSocial site, has the gadget server providing the rendering of the application. And then there's also the other component, an OpenSocial data server. This is a server that responds to the friends requests, or it responds to essentially any bit of the OpenSocial API and acts accordingly and provides a response. So why would you want to use Shindig? Well, for one thing, it's open source, it's free, it's a very strong community of both Google and external developers around the world that are working on it. It's continuing to grow. You can use the code today in production environments. So a number of like Orchid, High5, and the various other ones that are already using it today. And it also has some nice features. It's up to the latest published, it supports version 0.7 of the specification, and it's going to support very soon the version 0.8 as well. Another very important point is that today it is supporting Java and PHP. We hope to have more people contributing code, so it will also encompass other server-side languages, whether it's Python, Perl, or what have you, the different types of languages. Okay. So I'm going to sit down again. I hope it's okay, and just show you very quickly what it is to interact with OpenSocial. So first of all, I'm going to go to this website right here. Don't worry, I'll center the page. So this is the main page that you would want to go to if you want to download and understand what is this thing called Shindig. Incubator.apache.org/Shindig, and I'll make sure that you get that information. I believe you get the slides as well. This is where you can get all the information about how to check out the code, build it on your own, and so forth. So here you can follow the steps on how to get the code and then actually run it. So you can run Shindig within just a few minutes of having pulled it down from the repository. And likewise, if you want to become a member and contribute your own code in the form of patches, there's instructions on here on how to do that. So if you just follow the instructions here, it explains how to, once you pull down the code and you make like an enhancement, you can then contribute it back to Shindig. And we're very happy to include people and new members of the Shindig development community. And this is how you can get involved with the mailing list. So there's instructions on how to subscribe to the mailing list here, and then you can become a member. And it's probably good to listen in to the conversations going on, and then you can get a feel for how the overall development is going. So what I'm going to show you really quickly is just what it's like to play with Shindig immediately. So I just pulled down Shindig just before I went on stage. So this is a current build. And there are the different components. So there's Java, there's PHP, and there's some common JavaScript that can work in both environments. And if you read a README file, it explains what to do to get things running. So in this case, if I type MDN, which is Maven, so if you've heard of Maven, it's like build scripts to build the technology. I just type that and it will actually build it. And likewise, if I want to run the Java portion at least, I can just type maven-p run, and that will start Shindig locally. And this is the Java version. The PHP you actually take and put it on your PHP server. But with the Java version, it has an embedded server called Jetty, and now it's up and running locally. So if I bring up this particular website, so as you can see, it's localhost 8080, so that's the port. And then here, what we're looking at is a sample container. So it's like a sample web page that has like an embedded gadget. So the gadget is that center area right there. And then you can actually change the different gadgets location. So if you had your own gadget, or if I wanted to load my own list of friends or whatever, I would put it in that field there. Also, you can also check out what else is available. So in general, if I go up the URL, I can see that there's the code for just various samples across the board for different gadgets inside of it. So there's a lot of fun things you can do with the sample code that you get up and running just for free. Okay, so that's essentially Shindig running locally very easily. There's a few requirements though. You need to have Maven, and you need to have Subversion to check out the code. And of course you need Java for running the Java portion, that is. Okay. I'll go ahead and hit Control-C and shut it down. I'll go back to my presentation. I'll stand up. Okay. So now let's talk about the REST API. So this is another aspect of Shindig that allows you to communicate with the server, but without JavaScript. So as you remember before, I showed you JavaScript functions. But say you didn't have a JavaScript environment. Say you were working for a company that all you wanted to do was write some code on a server somewhere and make a connection to a Shindig or an OpenSocial server, and then retrieve the data by itself. This is what the REST API can allow you to do. So simple REST calls, does not require JavaScript, allows direct server-to-server communication. So therefore, you can integrate with server-side technologies such as Java, PHP, Perl, Python, doesn't really matter. So as you can see here, there's your site, you make a REST request, the REST server can respond in either JSON, so JavaScript documentation, or Atom Publishing Protocol. And then it's up to you to parse the data when it comes back and then plug it into your own infrastructure. So just real short before finishing up on Shindig, High5 is a very successful social networking site, like I said, or it's very popular in Latin America and various other parts of the world. They use Shindig completely. They have a number of Shindig servers. They have over 40 different servers. They have 1 billion hits per day, or like roughly 30 billion per month. And they're really having, massive numbers of people hitting the software. So it's not like the software is very preliminary or not really used very much. It's actually providing a business solution for not just High5, but several companies that are now using it. So they're having a good success with Shindig. Okay. Now, before finishing up entirely, I want to touch on another technology that's within the realm of OpenSocial. This is called FriendConnect, or Google FriendConnect. And so this is for another type of developer. This is a developer who does not necessarily have a full back-end infrastructure, but they might just have a website or a small blog, And the cool thing about Google Friend Connect is that without having to invest in a lot of programming, a lot of infrastructure, they can turn their blog or their own website into an OpenSocial social networking site. So in this case, it allows them, without too much pain, so in this case, what's the main problem here? They don't, a blogger is not going to have access to databases and the whole social engine for doing that stuff. So the solution for them is literally to just use this simple technology called Google Friend Connect. So how does it work? Well, it's based on standards. It's based on things like OAuth for authentication for essentially secure transactions of data. It's also very important at the top. It's kind of hard to read, but it supports OpenID. OpenID is a way that you can define the identity of yourself on the internet, and that can transcend different environments such as Yahoo, Gmail, AIM, or Facebook, or what have you. These are all different environments, but there's a new movement now to have like a single unifying identification system called OpenID, and Google Friend Connect supports that. So that means if you have an OpenID identification, you can log into any one of these sites that supports Friend Connect. Okay. So in short, it's a hosted OpenSocial container solution, and you can utilize the benefits from that. So here's an example. Ingrid Michelson is a musician, and so she's busy playing music, and so she's not programming, and she may not even do her own blog, her own website, but she's able to have like a social networking site so people can log in and interact with the gadget, an OpenSocial application on her blog site, and compare and have friends interacting with the different music tracks that she has created. So that's like a nice example of she's able to reap the benefits of OpenSocial technology without having to be an advanced software developer in that case. Here's my own experience with Friend Connect. I'm in the process of creating a new blog site. Once I go home, I'll finally finish it. But I'm using WordPress, so if you're familiar with WordPress, I just put it on my own server, and I created a little Friend Connect widget. And it was really easy because I just log in and I generate the code, and I just stick it into a little area there, and then it actually renders OpenSocial applications. So I can put 1, 2, 3, any number of OpenSocial applications onto my web page. And this application is very important that it gives you for free, in that people can sign into this website using their Gmail, their Yahoo, their OpenID account, and then they can become registered members of my blog. So it creates its own social network within this web page by itself. So it's actually quite compelling. And then once I have this social network of people, I can put other applications inside of that, and I can programmatically work with the social graph information that's provided from within this own website by itself. So it's very compelling. So if you're interested, there's a whole set of different people that might be interested, like site owners, app developers, and things like that. There's definitely a recommended website, google.com/friendconnect. You can get a feel for how that works. Incidentally, I'll show a quick demo in my next presentation of how to work with Friend Connect. All right, and just to finish up on the overall introduction, I just wanted to give you a feel for where we are with our developer sandboxes. We have a number of companies that are coming online. We've had, of course, High5, Orchid, MySpace, that's been around for a while, but there's also some new people like iMeme. iMeme is a company that provides some cool music-related interaction, and various other ones across the board. And as I mentioned before, all of these environments are providing now over 2,400 applications that reaches over 275 million users around the world today. And so there's numerous developers, numerous installs. So as you can see, the ecosystem is thriving and continuing to grow. So at that point, it looks like I made it on time. I'd like to say shishe and open it up for questioning. And I believe we have the microphone for questions. Is the microphone down there? Okay, great. So feel free to, maybe if you want to come up in the aisles or whatever, and she can meet you with questions. Any questions? There we go.
You mentioned the Shindig server,
yeah.
And I'm wondering where does the like brains context the data, where the data stored?
Okay, that's a very good question, and I'm going to answer it right now, and I'm also going to show you in my next presentation, because I show you how to integrate Shindig with a MySQL database, or any SQL database for that matter. In the very simple demo that I showed just now, there's a state file, an XML state file, and right now when you download Shindig, it just reads this XML file for the social graph information. But this is a part of Shindig that it's meant for you to be able to customize and extend. And in the next presentation, I show you literally how to extend people service, activity service, persistent service, and then have that code go out and talk to a database or talk to any live data server. It doesn't really matter if it's SQL or whatever. And then at that point, you can pull that social graph information back into Shindig, and then Shindig can do whatever it needs to do to display it or interact with the social applications. So yeah, stick around and I'll show you more details on how to do that.
Sounds like the OpenSocial is a very nice thing. So I'm just wondering, why not Facebook?
Oh yeah. It's like I can. The clock is ticking until the Facebook question. Yeah. So.
Anyway, I just wonder is Facebook provide the same kind of like CP server?
Facebook provides the same way.
OpenSocial like the APIs.
Oh, okay. So in general, and this is kind of a standard response, OpenSocial is open to everyone. We don't exclude anyone. So we're of course open for Facebook to work with us and integrate their technology. And there's actually been some third party that have provided some bridging technologies that actually link the two worlds together. But in general, Google and of course Google's partners within OpenSocial, the way that it works within OpenSocial is that it's 100% open source, so anyone is welcome to contribute, and then anyone is welcome to also take advantage of what is being created here. So who knows, maybe down the road there'll be more integration. There's a lot of similarity, obviously, but we'll see how it goes. But there's definitely no intent on Google or the specific folks within the OpenSocial community to exclude anyone. It's what it's meant to be. It's open, so anyone can join it. So. Any other questions? Are we doing out of time? It looks like we're doing okay. So I'll have a break between the next presentation. So if you want to stick around, the next presentation I'll do drills down on a little bit more technology on Shindig. I'll show how to integrate with a database. I'll show how to interact with the REST APIs, and a few more things. So feel free to stick around. And thank you very much. And